Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni, they deserve a lot more credit than they're getting for this Eagles 8-game win streak. We'll tell you why on this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Louie DiBiase, joined as always by Gino Camilleri. It's a Tuesday edition of the show, and we're brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. The Eagles riding an 8-game win streak. They have not lost since the bye week. A big-time win on Sunday in Baltimore, 24-19 over the Baltimore Ravens. And, Gino, there's so many players and coaches we're going to highlight today. And I think when you look at this win streak, like a lot of the credit goes to Vic Fangio. We've highlighted how good this young defense is on all three levels. It feels like each game they take turns just completely dominating, and then sometimes as a complete unit. Saquon Barkley, of course, in the MVP conversation as a running back. Like, all of these things are grabbing local and national headlines, as they should. But I do think like Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts deserve a lot of credit, and I think they deserved a lot of criticism early in the year. Like, I know me and you have kind of been talking about how Sirianni has proved us wrong, same with Jalen. I think at the time that criticism was justified, but I will say, like, when you look at how they've allowed this team to almost just completely delegate across the roster, the selflessness of that, knowing what's best for the team, like Jalen knowing this is a run-first offense. Like, let's let Saquon Barkley be the Batman. Nick Sirianni knowing, hey, I'm not the better play caller on this coaching staff. Hey, Vic Fangio needs to run this defense. Like, they truly talk the talk and walk the walk about winning being the priority. So I do think that selflessness deserves credit, and I think it is resonating with this team that is more of a close-knit unit that I've seen in a very long time. Like, this feels like 2017 Eagles vibes in that locker room, and I think a lot of that has to do with Sirianni and Hurts' leadership.
Post week 4, right before the bye week, we had a show where I went on quite the rant calling for the head of Nick Sirianni, and in the back of my mind, all I was thinking is, prove me wrong, Nick. Prove me wrong, because I don't want to be proved right. I don't want 2023 to happen all over again, and we were saying, oh yeah, last year's season, that wasn't just an anomaly. There is truly something wrong. Well, look at where they were last year at 10-2. Look at where they are now at 10-2. Two completely different teams. And so much of it has to do with head coach Nick Sirianni. These guys never wavered from what he was preaching. Him and Jalen Hurts, one of the talking points last year was, are these guys on the same page?
Yeah.
Now more than ever, they are on the same page. And it's not just them, Lou. The entire organization feels like it's in alignment. It feels like Nick knows what Howie wants. Howie knows what Nick and his guys need, i.e. the guys he brought in for Fangio, the guys he brought in for Kellen Moore, and Jalen Hurts, the guy that is the quarterback of this ship, is doing what he has to do and not more than that. And that's exactly the message they need to send. Do your job. Know what your role is and do your job. Who on this team isn't doing their job right now?
I was going to say, it's such a selfless football team, and that really starts at your two most important spots, head coach and quarterback. Like, there's no ego with these two. And yeah, would you like a head coach that could also call plays? Absolutely. Would I like the passing game to be more consistent than it's been? 100%. But at the same time, like, for these guys to recognize, hey, the stronger unit on offense right now is the rushing attack. Hey, Kellen Moore should be the one calling plays. Like, there is no ego here at all. Jalen is not mad that his numbers don't look that great because Saquon Barkley's an MVP candidate, and he needs to be the guy that this offense runs through. Like, Nick Sirianni is not demanding the credit and wanting the play calling back. And I think that's really important. And I like what you mentioned about their relationship, because I think there was a strain in their relationship last year, and they could have let this thing completely collapse after the bye with that loss to Tampa Bay. And those two, as we saw that report this week, met for 2 hours a day throughout the bye week to figure this thing out. And that really is true leadership. And again, you can't quantify that a lot in numbers, But I think Jalen and Nick, like
Can
they
you
really.
though?
I guess you can.
Not? Look at the
I guess with
wins,
the team
man.
as a
Look at how
whole,
much
yeah.
success they've had over.
I
the
guess you
last
can
couple
in the
years.
form of wins, losses, and the win streaks for sure. And yeah, they truly like. Some people say they care about winning at the end of the day, but then there's like actually only caring about winning. And I really do believe that Nick and Jalen, like Jalen could have the worst game ever every single week, and he wouldn't care if the Eagles won.
I'm with you. And Nick Sirianni putting that ego aside is huge. And that's one thing as a young head coach, I'm sure that's difficult
It's
to
got to be.
say, man, what I'm doing is not working. But hey, one of the great signs of leadership is delegation, handing the play calling off to Shane all those years ago, not meddling in the defense like he did last year, making Patricia the defensive coordinator when things weren't going right, not finger pointing when the offense just wasn't working.
Sure.
Now it seems like they stepped back, Lou, and they really had a wake up moment after 2023 and after those first 4 games. They hit the bye week and said, we have to be on the same page or nothing is going to be successful here. Doesn't matter how good Jalen Hurts plays. Doesn't matter how good Saquon Barkley is. It doesn't matter how good the defense is. If we aren't all rowing in the same direction, there is no way we are going to get to the place where we want to get to. And one of the big reasons people were so hard on Nick Sirianni is the expectation of what this team was. You're not a first-year head coach who's going to have leeway. You were a guy who went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, coming up a season where this thing was treacherous at the end. The first 4 games, it wasn't fun either. But to see the fun pumped back into that building, to see how these guys are just on the football field, playing free, not thinking about it, just doing their job, that stems from what Nick is saying in the locker room week in and week out. And you could look around the NFL over the last couple weeks and see some of the teams that have been making business decisions, some of these teams that aren't in the playoff race that, hey, these guys, they're not trying to get hurt and ruin their career. Can't say that about the Eagles, man. These guys will claw at the door till they break that son of a gun down, run up in your trap, take over your trap. They did that to the Ravens the other day. These guys know what the message is. It is domination from the get, and until that last whistle blows, we have to be tougher than the other team. Nick Sirianni, for all the bad things that I've said, it never mattered what we had to say. It was what the guys in the locker room believed in. And to get 53 guys and the entire organization, the weight staff, the nutrition staff, to buy in what you're selling, how can we say he's not the leader that this team needs?
Just watch the videos, man. Watch Zack Baun mic'd up against the Rams where he's talking about Sirianni trusting them, and that's why he went for it on, or that's why he accepted the penalty, right? He accepted the penalty to back him up on 4th down. And
yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And you look at even like the mic'd up against Baltimore, and like you see the post game, the locker room clip of when he says they're working the next day, and they're all fired up about it. Like I really do think he has this locker room completely together. And last year, they were not together at the end of the season. So they deserve a ton of credit for that. And look, when it comes to the passing game, yeah, like they do need to be more consistent down the stretch. It's annoying when they lose one weapon. It feels like things just don't work. I think a lot of that's on Kellen Moore. But you also know they have those big games in them. We've seen it this year, and when they don't need it or when they just don't have it, Jalen's not trying to force it because he wants to be the hero. He's saying, okay, today's a Saquon day. I'm going to play efficient, clean football, and I'll be clutch in the 4th quarter. Like he has the highest 4th quarter passer rating in the league since that bye week, and he only has 1 pick during that 8-game win streak. So, I think sometimes, like you don't want a game manager when it means he can't do more. We know Jalen can do more, but right now, what's called for them to win games is for him to be a game manager, and he's accepting that. So I think, again, you want more eventually, and you're going to need it at some point, but I like that when it calls for a different game plan that doesn't really help your individual interests as much, these guys don't care about that. That's a true team.
I do think we can kind of miss the forest for the trees in the discussion of the passing game, right? Because we could say, yeah, we want it to be better, but when they were just chucking the ball down the field in the first 4 games of the season, They were turning the ball over. Jalen Hurts was pushing the offensive identity to be a pass-first team. Now they've just leaned into it, and being a game manager is probably one of the most incorrectly used phrases when it comes to football. If you're managing the game by keeping the ball in your hands and allowing your offense to do what they do so effectively, give me all the game manager quarterbacks, because I know what Jalen Hurts can do in those elite
I think
moments.
the word means it's like when, yes, those moments when
Yes.
you need more, can that guy be more? If they're not, if they can't do that, they're labeled as the manager. But like, Gino, we did see against Cincinnati this year, or against the Jaguars, or even the Dallas game for the most part, even the Rams game. If they wanted to throw more, I think they would have had success. There's probably been games this year where if they did decide to throw in the second half, when Saquon was hot, they probably would have still had success, and they just didn't because the run game was working. So, yeah, I mean, if they never had that Bengals game or that Jaguars game, if we didn't see some of those elite stretches, I'd still feel the way I did before the bye. But I have seen those moments where I know, hey, when Devontae Smith comes back, and if there is a game like against Baltimore where Saquon never breaks loose in the second half and they got to throw it, I do still think they have that in them. It's inconsistent, but I do think they have that in them to still win because of the passing game.
And it's just leaning into the message of knowing that when you guys need to turn it on, that they can. And you've seen those moments. Even Jalen Hurts, we say he can't be Superman all the time. You've seen the Superman moments where you're like, oh, yeah, we can rely on that guy to just get it done. When you need a touchdown, he's going to go and get you a touchdown. Almost runs that one in towards the end of the game there. And he's at the one and they push it. Like, put it on his shoulders. Know what your identity is and realize who you are. That's the biggest strength in football. When you try to be something that you are not, that's when things go awry. What they have right now is a true identity that they are leaning into. Nick Sirianni, his message, never wavered. One of the most winningest head coaches in the history of the Eagles. I can't believe 8 weeks ago we were calling for his head, but that's how quickly these things change in the National Football League.
That's the NFL.
You got to produce, and when adversity hits, he's turned it around 3 out of 4 seasons, Lou. So you got to be proud of what he has done as a head coach. And I'll keep saying, after these last 8 weeks, 2023 was an anomaly. Just felt like everything went wrong.
And now everything looks right on both sides of the ball. We'll get into stock up after the Eagles win over the Ravens, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast.
As we roll along, this episode of LOE is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. They have over 10 million members, and they have awarded over $1 billion. Yes, B as in billion dollars to their daily fantasy sports players. And all you have to do to get in on the action is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. And today is Tuesday. And on Tuesdays, Prize Picks offers Taco Tuesday, where they discount 25% of the player projection provided to give you even more value in your lineup. So for your next game, you're thinking maybe Justin Jefferson will get more than 83.5 yards. Maybe Lamar Jackson will throw more than 1.5 touchdowns. Not if that's against the Eagles. But if you want to sign up today, download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's LOCKEDON NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. And you don't even need to win. Prize Picks, run your game.
Thanks as always for making Locked On Eagles your first listen and watch each and every day, however you get the podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. Continuing to recap a 24-19 win for the Birds over the Baltimore Ravens to get to 10-2 on the season. Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni, we talked about their leadership really resonating across this entire roster, and that delegation, that selflessness. Again, like that can also be an identity, Gino. We talked about the toughness on the show yesterday, how that's an identity for this football team. But just the selflessness, doing whatever it takes to win and playing as one whole unit, like that really has resonated with this football team. And, of course, Jalen and Nick deserve a lot of that credit. But I also do think, like, stock up to Howie Roseman. We've talked a lot about how this year, just every move he's made has worked. But I think Howie actually deserves a lot of credit, too, for that tightness of this team, because one reason also they're so close is this entire team, it feels like they've grown up together. Like on both sides of the ball, this is the first time I feel like in a long time, the entire Eagles core pretty much is made up of homegrown talent that you've drafted in the last, 4 to 6 years. And really since that 2020 year, like Howie has done such a good job of building this team up through the draft and with young talent. First, it was on the offensive side of the ball and now on defense. And I don't think it's a coincidence. The chemistry is there more than it's been in 7 years.
I think you see that with the guys that come from the same teams, right? Like you have the Jalen with the Devontae Smith relationship. You have the Georgia Bulldogs, all of those guys going to school together. A lot of those SEC guys, you'll hear A.J. Brown talk about it, that Jalen Hurts was one of the guys trying to recruit him to go to Alabama. Right. And a lot of these guys played against each other in high school, and they know who they are and respect the play for each other. And now that they get to play together, especially on the defensive side of the ball, man, like you get Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who went to Florida. You get Darius Slay, who went to Mississippi State. You get Quinyon Mitchell, who went to Toledo. It's like, look at those three playing in the same secondary. You got a guy from the MAC, 2 guys from the SEC. You got Middle Tennessee State and Reed Blankenship. He's bringing in guys from all different environments. But the one thing that I think he nailed, Lou, is how much these guys love football.
Yeah.
You could see that being out there together, that brotherhood is really something that they play for, man. Like the guys in the secondary, Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, have that brotherly love relationship already. Reed Blankenship has talked about how influential Chauncey was when he was growing into his own as an undrafted free agent in that Super Bowl season. You hit it right on the head, Lou. Like Landon Dickerson is Jordan Mailata's best man. They're each other's best friends. They quite literally are just a bunch of good buddies playing football out there right now. And that's what good coaches always say. It's a kid's game that we're overcomplicating. Just make it fun.
I think that's true.
You're playing with your boys.
It's not a bunch of
great environment.
It's not a bunch of mercenary free agents that are 32 years old and just don't care about what football team they're on or who they're teammates with. Like they all, they're boys, man. And I think that's it sounds so simple, but I really think that's an important part of how Howie Roseman has built this football team. And I'm not going to say this isn't a negative towards, the old core, like Jason Kelsey, Fletcher Cox, even BG and Lane Johnson to a degree. But I do think Kelsey and Cox calling it quits this year, even the BG injury kind of testing this young core, I think it is one of the best things that could have happened to a young core because it kind of forced them, number one, to own the bounce back this year from last year. You've seen these guys grow up fast because they have to. Look at Jalen Carter, who the main reason he slipped in the 2023 draft, they were concerned about his character. They were concerned about his immaturity. And then you hear the mic'd up of Zack Baun against LA and hearing Carter lead that team vocally. That's awesome. Even you mentioned Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. We've said all the time on the show, he's the heartbeat of this defense, but now he is against the Ravens, on the sidelines, he's rallying everybody up vocally in the first quarter. Things that BG would have done in the past or Fletch. Now these young guys got to do it. And I really do think that almost throwing the baby out of the nest kind of mentality has allowed this team to grow as the season has progressed.
It's almost like I can remember this feeling when your parents are dropping you off at college and then they leave and you're like, oh, I have to be an adult. I have to pay my credit card bill. I have to know how to get my oil changed. You have to learn to be a true human in that moment. And in football, they always say it's the closest thing to war. Well, you're in the fire. There's nothing to replicate that unless you are in it. And I think a lot of that, the leadership, comes down to being in those moments when adversity is hitting and you don't have Fletcher Cox and you don't have BG.
You don't have the vets to bail you out anymore. Yeah.
You have to have somebody grab the totem and say, boys, this is the way we got to go. This is the direction we have to go. We don't have the old leaders. They're gone. Our generals are taken out. Who's going to be the guy to step up? It's not just one, Lou. There's multiple guys grabbing for that.
There's a bunch of them.
Totem. Yeah. And that's the direction you want to continue this team to push. Because how that is established, Lou, that wasn't established when these guys came in. That wasn't established even when the old guard came in. This thing was established, if you think about it, 2 decades ago. Because the lessons that guys like Trey Thomas and the John Runyons influenced on this offensive line over the year to bring in those Jason Kelce's that have said in this message for decades. It's now a generational message what it is to play defense for the Philadelphia Eagles, right? Like Fletch was there for the end of the Andy Reid era.
Yeah.
You're getting those messages across multiple generations, and all of it has to do with the buy-in. And what Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman have made clear is that they're not going to be one of those football teams that is just operating like a business, just operating to cut profit. They want to win football games, and they know the guys that it takes to win football games. True football people win football games. That's what you have on the field, Lou. I see a bunch of guys that enjoy playing football. You said it bang on. This isn't the mercenary teams where guys like Orlando Scandrick are coming.
2015, that entire Eagles team. Like, that's the example of when I think it changed. Was I think Howie saw that roster and said, that can't be what the Eagles are anymore.
We aren't that. That's never who the Eagles were. And that's why it was so disappointing. It's like, there's always been an identity. There's always been that. Like 2017, what got them to where they needed to go? Who was the next leader up? Oh, Jason Peters goes down. Who's the next guy up?
Yeah, exactly.
That's another example of that, Lou. Like young guys learning on the job. In comes Big V. In comes Halapoulivaati Vaitai. In comes all of those young running backs after a guy like Darren Sproles comes out. In comes a Nick Foles. That is a generational type of thing that you cannot just say started now. This goes so much deeper than that. And those seasons, the dream team years, the season you brought up a couple years ago, when you see that, you know that's not an Eagles team. This is a Philadelphia Eagles team that plays with true Philadelphia passion. And this is, you can't quantify this. You can't put a number behind it. It just is a feel that you have to understand if you have watched this team long enough on what it is to play for the Philadelphia Eagles. And all those guys they brought back this year and the guys they drafted, they embraced the identity to be a blue collar worker, to go to work every single day. That's my soapbox.
Everything's worked.
I love being a fan of this team, man.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, everything has worked that Howie Roseman's done over the last few years to completely rebuild this defense and continue to make this offense a juggernaut. We'll highlight the players that shine the most against the Baltimore Ravens coming up next as we wrap up this Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles. This episode of Locked On Eagles is sponsored by America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel, because right now, new customers, you can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if you win your first bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app, they give you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in just one place. So you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So just take the anytime touchdown for Saquon Barkley. You know it's going to hit, even if it's in the fourth quarter. You might have to wait a little bit, but I promise you it's going to hit. Or the anytime rushing touchdown for Jalen Hurts. One of those two bets, just place $5 on it. You're going to get $150 back in bonus bets with that win. Visit FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we're wrapping up this Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles, continuing stock up. We've been doing the show for, I think, 8 straight weeks now where we haven't really had a stock down segment. And
tough, man.
I don't know, like, that's going to continue with the way they're playing football.
I got one.
Do you have one? I've got
one.
We probably have the same one, but
probably not.
Okay,
we got to stop taking penalties on special teams.
Ooh, okay.
That is costing them some.
That's
early
fair.
on in that game, that really killed them. And those were dumb things like fair catch interference. That's got to be coached up better. Sidney Brown running out of bounds and being the first guy to make contact. But those are little things that
penalties in general, Gino, like the first quarter, 2 red zone penalties for the offense.
Agree, yes,
they definitely no, that's right. That's definitely stock down. They have
discipline
to
is in those little areas which can really cost you
sure.
those hidden yards. Let me ask you this, Lou. If you could think of the 2 reasons, and it's super cliche, why their offensive drives stall out, what are the main 2 reasons?
Yeah, I mean, number 1, it's penalties.
And sacks. Penalties and sacks always will kill you. And how many times can you look at like the first 2 drives of a game and say, oh, they're moving the ball well, they're in like the 35 to 45 territory. There's your holding call. Now
there's the holding call. Instead of being at the 25, now you're at the 35. And then here comes another ineligible player downfield. There's another couple yards back.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's definitely what's been killing their momentum early in games. So definitely stock down to penalties. And also, Gino, the health of Dallas Goedert, man. He's going to be week to week now with a knee injury, which is so disappointing because I felt like the momentum was building again for Dallas. Like, big time touchdown in the second quarter to put the Eagles back in this football game. Huge 3rd and 7 conversion in the fourth quarter of a gotta have it game winning drive. It's like, boom, like that's why you get Dallas Goedert the football. Like, here we go. And now he's out again. Like, this is just the Dallas Goedert experience, and you just can't really rely on him full time. It's why, I don't know, like, I'm not saying release the guy after this year, but you're going to have to draft a tight end early like you did after the 2017 Super Bowl season when you drafted Goddard in the second round. Like, I do think it's time to start thinking about that other long-term option because this is just kind of what you get every year.
You're going to have to find your Dalton Kincaid like Buffalo did to their Dawson Knox.
Yep.
Like, not a guy you're going to get rid of, but just not a guy you can rely on as heavily as you thought of in the past. Big couple weeks here for Grant Calcaterra, and we'll see how they elevate guys. I thought C.J. Uzomah in those lead blocking situations in the run game, now that Ben Van Sumeren was out, did a pretty good job, but they still don't have anybody that can be that next up receiver outside of Calcaterra.
Goddard, by the way, it's not a season-ending injury. He's week to week, probably eligible for the short-term IR. We'll be back for the playoffs, but again, this is just kind of what you get.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, let's continue stock up, Gino, and we'll start with the 3 pillars of this defense. I think most would agree your 3 best players are on all 3 levels. It's Jalen Carter, it's Zack Baun, and it's Quinyon Mitchell. Those 3 completely dominated that football game. I thought Jalen Carter, that was the best game of his career, and that's crazy because he was being held on every play. 8 quarterback pressures, 2 quarterback hits, a sack, and 3 tackles for a loss in that game. Not only was that one of the best games we've had of the season from an Eagle, but that was one of the most dominant defensive performances I've ever seen.
All right, I think we have to implement this. We have to come up with the Jalen Carter chaos meter.
The Carter chaos meter, yeah.
I think on a scale of like a teddy bear to him being held back by Clint Hurt as like the crazy chaos.
Oh, after the Saints game, yeah.
He was pretty close to that, Lou.
I know.
Like, he was an absolute menace. You can't stop him one-on-one. You can't stop him by doubling
he's in your
him.
Face every play.
You have to hold
snap.
him. He's going to chirp you to death.
Yeah,
he's going to say, I'm going to get right up in your grill. And then he's going to just throw you. And good players, too. Like, he's ragdolling Tyler Linderbaum, and who's a really good center in the National Football League. And Jordan Davis is so good against the run. Like, please just go and watch. Go to NFL Pro, $9.99 a month, get Jordan Davis's clips of his cut-ups against the run, and watch a man who is a literal brick wall that you cannot move. And why Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson were subdued the other day, it's because all the guys, the backers, Zack Baun, Nakobe Dean, those guys coming downhill, why they can tackle so easily is because you need 600 combined pounds of man at a minimum to try and stop Jordan Davis
and then,
down in and down out.
Like, Gino, and if you get past Carter and Jordan Davis somehow, like, Zack Baun is everywhere. I mean,
he's a magnet to the football.
No matter where Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry went, like, he was there. He, by the way, now is the highest graded linebacker in the NFL. The Eagles have, this is crazy, and yes, it's true, and I would never believe I'd ever say these words. The Philadelphia Eagles right now have the best linebacker in football, which is insane.
Hard to believe, but
he's playing the best out of anybody right now.
They need to extend him ASAP.
They have to.
I don't know how true the rumor was that I saw, but there was apparently they want to start talks in the season at some point.
They better.
Frost. That's just a common sense type of thing that if Howie Roseman was smart, he would make that happen. Right now, I think he is the biggest piece that Vic Fangio needs to operate the defense in his Fangio style, where guys are positionless. He makes you guess all of the time. It is just a culmination of Howie Roseman drafting well, signing the guys that he needed to in areas where they knew they were weak, and not just doing it in a Band-Aid fashion, but in a way where you're getting a guy who's just coming off of his first rookie contract, making him move positions and capitalizing on a skill set that the rest of the league couldn't take advantage of. Good on the Eagles for finding that type of player. Good on the Eagles for drafting Jordan Davis. Good on the Eagles for drafting Jalen Carter. And good on the Eagles coaches for developing all of the guys around them. Because the development, I think, is one of the most underrated parts when it comes to that defensive line. The stamina of Jordan Davis now and Jalen Carter not missing a snap over
Yeah.
the last 3 weeks, dude, like these
Crazy.
guys are the pillars of your defense. You said it.
And I think Quinyon Mitchell, you could make the argument, like Zack Baun's the best linebacker in football. Statistically right now, Quinyon Mitchell might be the best corner in football. Of all corners that have played at least 450 coverage snaps this year, he's allowed just 321 receiving yards. It's the fewest in the NFL. By the way, he's also with players that have had 450 plus coverage snaps. He's the only player that has not allowed a touchdown. They gave Sidney Brown the knock for the touchdown for Cooper Kupp against the Rams. So that continued. Okay. Yeah, that continued against Baltimore. Only 2 receptions for 4 yards allowed on Q's side against the Ravens. Zay Flowers was targeted twice against Mitchell, 1-on-1 in the fourth quarter. Mitchell forced an incompletion both times. Like, when you have, again, we've said this on the show before, when you have an elite star at all 3 phases of the defense, it's pretty hard to stop that team. I mean,
how do you game plan against the Eagles front? Like
who do you
don't
attack?
know.
Who do you go after?
I don't know. Like you scheme up, okay, we're going to get 3 guys on Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis combined. And then it's like, oh, well, here comes Nakobe Dean just blowing up your
or Milton Williams, who has the
blocker.
highest pass rush win rate of any defensive tackle in football because he's getting these one-on-ones every play. So,
and if those guys miss out, you got like one of the most athletic edge groups in the league where these guys are going to get to the edge and pursue and
good,
tackle.
On Sunday.
Dude, I thought Jay Looks looked really good against the run. Somebody who's undersized, and he took on Patrick Ricard at the point of attack, who's a 300-pound fullback playing a 300-pound guard playing fullback rather. Jalen Hunt looks good. Nolan Smith looks unbelievable lately.
He played, 81% of the snaps with BG out. 8 tackles, 3 pressures, and a sack. Like, Nolan was great.
That's what you need in terms of, like, taking the totem and running. That's the type of leadership that Nolan might not be the guy that's leading the huddle every week, but he's speaking with how he plays on the football field, too. And speaking of Brandon Graham, Nolan Smith is just like another similar Brandon Graham story, in my opinion, where it's like, okay, when is this guy really going to take off? And then he does, and it's like, I see what we were trying to get at here. And now he's really good. I think Josh Sweat even deserves maybe a potential contract extension.
Should have had his 8th sack if it wasn't called back.
Who can you not talk about on this defense right now? Well, Avonte Maddox. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
But, even like this entire roster, we haven't even mentioned Saquon Barkley on the show because he just did what he does. But that was against the number 1 rushing defense in football that pretty much shut him out for the majority of that game.
Yep.
That has over 60 yards in the fourth quarter and the game-winning 20-plus yard touchdown. Like, I mean, but the roster, there's so much to talk about that. We didn't even get to Saquon.
We haven't even talked about the best player on the football team.
Favorite maybe to win MVP this year. I mean,
yeah, I don't even know, like, you hear me stuttering because I don't even know what to say about this guy anymore. Because
he jumped Lamar in the MVP voting. Fandor now has him second.
Set your watch to it every single week that you can guarantee he is going to have 1 to 2 knockout runs every single week. He is a killer in multiple ways, and he is another step in the right direction for Howie Roseman when it comes to changing his evaluation process. You see him change his linebacker evaluation process and his safety evaluation process and his corners, and a lot of that has to do with seeing the trends of the National Football League. Saquon is a trendsetter. The Eagles signing him was ahead of the curve. You're going to see so many teams overreact drafting running backs this year because of Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, those guys who have just completely overhauled some already really good teams for the better. But Saquon's a one-on-one. Don't think you're going to go into the draft, and even with an Ashton Genty, find this type of guy. The Eagles capitalizing on this player, Lou, he's going to break that record. I have a feeling, man. Like, he's going to break Eric Dickerson's record.
Yeah, I think he's on pace to do it. And that's such a cool – I love games like that where it's MVP candidate versus MVP candidate, elite star at a position versus another guy at that position. And Saquon was better than both Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson on Sunday. And now, according to FanDuel, second best MVP odds only behind Josh Allen. If he breaks that record, it's going to be hard to keep this guy away from.
You want to
that award.
DiBiase jinx this thing and say Allen's going to win the MVP right now?
I do think Josh Allen's going to win the MVP, so maybe that'll.
If he wins, if Saquon now wins it, Lou DiBiase is directly responsible for that.
I don't know when this happened. How did this jinx, this curse transfer to me?
Dude, I'm glad you have it.
Somehow I must have did something and it passed over for sure. All right, we'll be back tomorrow for another edition of Locked On Eagles. 3 more shows for you this week. Thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch each and every day. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. Thanks as always for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.